Welcome back. This is F a Rap Critic. It's your boy Malik 16 from Plates and Crates. And no, I don't think I want to lean back again. I will, show my boy Sean P, but I do think I'm going to lean forward for the remainder of this video, just to switch it up a little. And now we're still going over the classic Adrenaline Rush by Twista. And with no further ado, let's get into category 2, the rap performance on this album. And if you have not already, please take this moment to like and subscribe to the channel. Yes, that would be greatly appreciated so we can get some rankings and find out just how classic is this classic. All right, the first dimension in category 2 is the question of personality and charisma. How much of that was shown on this album? Well, let's talk about it. We discussed the significance of his other 2 albums. And, on this album review channel, we really don't like to dwell too much on other releases by an artist unless it's super relevant to what is being discussed on this particular project. And so maybe Twista felt like he didn't get to display enough of his personality or his city on the other releases, because we mentioned there being more Chicago referencing on the second album than the first, and there being this kind of deliberate effort to incorporate as much Chicago sounds, voices, and references on this album through both the skits and the songs. And so personality-wise, what you're getting from Twista is this idea that he's loyal to his clique. He's about making money, but he's really, really about that action if anybody wants to test him. And when he's not doing that, he's willing to take a break here and there for some sex. We talked about that when we talked about the content, and I don't know how much of himself you're getting other than that. Loyalty is really big on this album. In vulnerable moments like on Corrupt World, you get a glimpse of what he values, but even that is in the context of loyalty. And he's taken this perspective of being this Chicago representative who's not just an observer. He's telling you he's this Chicago representative who's very active in Chicago. So that's what he's presenting on this album. And something for you to consider on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats. That takes us to dimension 2. The believability or suspension of disbelief. It's not really a concept album. You're not being asked to suspend your disbelief and assume that Twista's going into some kind of character. You're really being asked to believe Twista on face value. That if he says, I'll die for everybody on this song with me, that he means that. And he spends so much time talking about it that you want to believe that he has to mean it, right? Who spends this much time talking about murder and sex? Who's not about that, right? He makes these internal references, even on the sex songs, insinuating that, the rapping is not separate from the man, right? He says something like, she knows him fast with the tongue, she want to see what I got. Things like that. That's all throughout. It's not a lot of delineation saying, I am not who I am portraying on this album. This is very much, this is me, Joe. So the question to you all is, how much do you believe that on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats? I would love to hear what you all say. I'm feeling this sheen in my background here. I'm liking this white on white action. Anyway, dimension 3, delivery and use of voice. The best example I can think of when it comes to breath control, when it comes to enunciation, when it comes to control of tone and use of speed, right? We're talking about delivery being all about how the voice and timing find each other. This was the closest to soulmate kind of pairing that you can think of. Twista's timing is his superpower. I think about what Twista does the way I think about comic book characters. There's a whole bracket of heroes in DC Comics that are called speedsters. Their powers that they control all things dealing with motion, kinetics, and time itself. And that would be Twista. Twista would be the Flash, who is like the most powerful of all of them, right? I'm getting real nerdy here, but the idea is that Twista had a lot of time to work on this. You know, he had 2 albums that didn't go as he hoped, and he decided what his approach to this was going to be. He found his voice. The Chicago accent that is heavy here, the exaggerated pronunciation of things, the twang that is now prominent, that was intentional, but that's also from a real place, right? He's using his real voice. He's not trying to emphasize anything other than his Chicago-ness. And letting that out on this album was really important, because it's really prominent and it's evident. And then on top of that, being able to syncopate rhymes when you're rapping as fast as he does is all dependent on how well you're able to present them, package them, and get them across. And his diction is clear to the point where you still hear the accent, he's still speaking slang, but you hear every vowel and consonant sound with whatever emotional emphasis he wanted to put on there. If he wanted you to know it was a more aggressive line, you're hearing it. If he wanted to go up in volume to you know, really make a point and drive it home, he does that. And if he wanted to be smoother, like he does on the sexy songs, you get it. If he wants to go like water, you know, he's bringing the tone up, he's bringing the tone down as it calls for. And if he's making anything close to humor, he lightens his voice up in just enough of a way where you know this is not as aggressive as the preceding or the following sentence that comes out. You know, it's just, this is mastery at its top notch. This is a master class in how to rap. Something for you to consider on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats, because Twista is the final instrument on every last song on here. These songs would knock, but they wouldn't be quite songs if Twista didn't do what he did on it. All right, so that takes us to dimension 4. Probably the most important dimension out of all, if we're talking about Twista, is the flow. This is a rapid fire, you know, stacking style that Twista does. It's words per minute, in between different spaces of the beat, where the triplet flow, what you have all come to know as the Migos flow, where the words will be rolling and going and moving in. You know, it's a lot of that unravel, where the rhymes kind of roll over the beat. They just continue to roll over the beat. And, you know, that's something that's usually, of course, it's in Twista's arsenal, but it's not relied upon on this album. So you'll hear it, but because it's so distinctly what Bone was doing at the time in 3 6 Mafia, Twista does the other kinds of flows that you'll hear with fast rappers, and a lot of the flows that he pioneered, being one of the first fast rappers that we, the world at large, got to hear. Twista was pop, 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 landing, pop, 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 landing. Then he'll switch it up and go in between. And it was not uncommon for Twista to switch a flow maybe no less than 8 times in one verse. This is why he's a rapper's rapper. This is really a Midwest thing, because this is where, you know, this is the school of rhyme that Eminem comes from, where you get these couplets where maybe there's a word or two that ping pong before they land on the final part of the couplet. But what Twista does is the rhyming words are back to back. Skip, another back to back word combo, and this is all within a couplet, leading to another couplet, and they all are volleying and still rhyme. And on top of that, he's doing sentences that rhyme with each other. Lots of rhyming words before you even get to the last rhyming part of the bar sentence. And you know, whether you pronounce it holorhyme or holorhyme, we all learned something new today, because it's a tool that is used mostly. A lot of underground rappers have used it. A lot of people feel like it's a cheat code. It's a quick way to rhyme a lot and sound like you're doing a lot of damage, just like a lot of underground rappers used to tend to use big words to sound like they're doing something. But what cannot be denied is that this is still pleasing to the ear. That's kind of a universal truth at this point. People respond positively to lots of rhyming words. The positivity rate of it is what makes it undeniable. Whether you believe it's a cheat code or not, people enjoy the rhythmic consequence of hearing all of those rhyming words together in a pattern. And it's a skill. It's definitely a talent to do it at the speed and tempo that Twista does it at, and with what he's saying in it. So, not only that, but as we'll talk about in the next dimension, all of these lines make sense. This is not Busta Rhymes or, what a lot of rappers do and cheat when they rap fast, is try to use the MF word and squeeze a lot of those go-to easy to squeeze in curse words to fill in the space. No, these are linear sentences with tongue-in-cheek and real clever and gritty things. And so you're getting different flows on different songs. He experiments. Ironically, the hooks on the last 3 songs sound like Bone Thugs. And that's just gonna be the comparison that anyone makes for anyone who raps fast with a melodious quality. It could be anybody who chooses to rap fast in a melodic cadence. You're just automatically gonna get compared to Bone. So as much as Twista did not even, careen in the same territory as Bone with the rolling kind of flow, even though he showed that he could do it here and there in pockets, it wasn't his style. He carved his own style out. But a part of that means if I'm the master of fast rapping, at some point you're probably gonna hear something in there that reminds you of that. I'm also an artist, So something to consider on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats. That takes us to dimension 5. Bar intent and wordplay. Wordplay and bar intent. Again, I tell you, Twista is not wasting words on this album. There's lots of wordplay here. I'm gonna put up some lines so you get an idea of a man who's able to put these kind of lines while executing that fast rap. It's not easy to do. Everybody thinks they can just pick up and do that. And now it might be easier for this generation where this style of rap is more commonplace. In the mid-90s, this was only known in the Midwest. This was a sign to Bone Thugs, which is why when Notorious Thugs came out, everybody's mind was blown that a rapper from Brooklyn could keep up with them, even though he wasn't really keeping up. He was doing a very, very simple pickup kind of flow, but that's how new this was to the genre. People in the Midwest, they're like, hey, my cousin rap fast like that. The Brat came out rapping fast because this, as I explained in video 1, almost became a rites of passage from the school of Twista. It's like, oh, this is a default language for us. Everybody here can rap regular and can rap fast. So to be able to fit clever lines, and this is what Twista wanted to do. Twista wanted to be provocative. He wanted to show humor without being taken as a joke. Something that I think Rakim did really well, where it's like, when you hear Rakim drop a tongue-in-cheek line, it's like, oh, but he's doing that without a smile. He just wants you to know, yeah, I'm human, but I'm no joke. So I think Twista also follows a lot of that. He's not trying to do these pop culture references to make you go, ooh and ah, but he is gonna do some clever lines to make you go, oh, okay, he's nasty. Something to consider on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats. That takes us to dimension 6, punchlines, poetic wisdom, and overall quotability. I think if you are trying to have a battle of gangster rap verses, you would have to print some of these verses out, and they stand up there with some of the most gangster rap verses, the hardest verses of all time. If you were talking about poetic wisdom, there are lines in there where you get Twista commenting on things around him. And in those little moments, you get some gems, some observational gems that Twista does toss in there that I think are very quotable. And if we're just talking about punchlines, well, again, I explained there's not a lot of them. You get these tongue-in-cheek lines where he's flipping words and playing with words that make you go, oh, every line was meant to do something. So he may not be the purveyor of poetic wisdom or punchlines, but you're getting enough lines with clever sentiment to not be overlooked. Again, you would really, I advise anyone to go read verses from Twista's music as you're listening to it, if you're gonna listen to it, just so you can really see what was being executed here. Something for you all to consider on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats. That takes us to dimension 7, concepts. Okay, concepts are few and far between here. It keeps everything pretty surface level. If the song is called Feel So Good, it's about, making a woman feel good, having a timeout. Get It Wet, it's about exactly what you think it's about. Overdose, he keeps referencing, if I overdose on weed, you don't want to see me act up. We know overdosing on weed will most likely mellow someone out to the point where they're probably not going to be aggressive and act out. But it's repeated throughout the song as if like, don't push me there. But not a lot of concepts. Corrupt world, no remorse, emotions is kind of a let me get you before you get me. This kind of pimp ethic there, pimp ethos. No, I would say this album is pretty starved for concepts. I don't know. I would love to hear if you all discovered some conceptual pieces on this album. I don't believe there to be many or any. So something to consider on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats, which takes us directly to content. Externalizes dimension 8. Content internalizes dimension 9. So content externalizes asking, how much did Twista talk about things outside of himself, socially conscious, the environment, the world? We don't get that except for on Corrupt World. Same with dimension 9. You're gonna get the fullest extent of internalized and externalized content on that one song, and it's fleeting. It comes here and there. They're not these clear verses where it's like, here's my song where I'm talking about the ills of the world or the ills of the hood. I'm just mentioning some anecdotal points about things being messed up in the hood. I mentioned in video 1 that it seems like this album only has 2 modes, and it's sex and murder, sex and murder, sex and murder. Some of you consider that content. I think you might be tripping if you do, but he might be able to get away with it on a 12-song album where sticking to those 2 spaces doesn't really take away because, everything's so succinct. Get It Wet is one dimension of a girl song, quote unquote girl song, right? Where emotions is another dimension. This is, hey, again, who's gonna manipulate the other one better? Feel So Good is let's just go out and kick it. Get It Wet is straight to the bedroom, right? So 3 different ways of talking about the same topic. Same with, the murder songs. Death Before Dishonor and Unsolved Mystery are different than No Remorse and Adrenaline Rush. So something to consider on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats. How much is being talked about on this album takes us to the final dimension, that is storytelling. Most of the verses kind of incorporate some storytelling element. Twista gets very descriptive when he's laying out scenarios. So what he lacks in linear storytelling, like, hey, this is what I did, I went here. He sets the scene. He sets a lot of scenes on every song. He's laying it out with a lot of description of what will happen, what can happen, what could happen. He speaks in a lot of future tense, not too much past, and more future than present. So you're not getting any direct stories. There's no, once upon a times here. This is all letting you know possibilities, speaking in terms of, the suspected turnout or the projected turnout. Some of you may feel that's a weakness. Some of you may feel like that's a good accent to some of the more straightforward braggadocio rapping. So something for you to consider on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats. That is dimension 10, and that concludes all of your dimensions in category 2, which is the rap performance on the album. And yeah, I would love to hear what y'all think about this classic Adrenaline Rush by Twista. Let me hear your scores. Send them, put them in the comments below. DM me on Plates and Crates, at Plates and Crates on IG. And yeah, if you have not already, like and subscribe. We are still building this global hip hop community. We need you to make it a true global hip hop community. Tell a friend to tell a friend. We need you to keep building it up and putting the scores in so it can be more official. All right? Y'all know what to do. Until then, F a Rap Critic. Talk about it while I live it. Word to Matt.